Welcome to another edition
Okay.
of Diaspora Weekly. This must be my fourth or fifth interview of you. I love talking to you.
I've lost count. I've lost count.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're joined today by none other than Her Excellency Dr. Arikana. My favorite, right now, my number one favorite sister. Why? Do you know why that is the case? Because you love Africa.
I feel honored. Thank you.
You love Africa, and so welcome.
Thank you, my brother.
Today, Africa is not in good shape. There's flashpoints all over the place, and so I really want to thank you for agreeing to talk to me on this show. Let's start with Nigeria.
No, thank you for. Yes.
Nigeria.
You're breaking up.
Okay, I said there's flashpoints all over the place in Africa. The number one flashpoint today, as we speak, Endsars, Nigeria. What is going on there?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we are all. What I know is what you know, what we can all see on television. And but in a nutshell, it just looks like this is really something that's been brewing for a long time. When you look at the African youths, of course, we do have the issue with the South, and I understand the president has agreed that this South can be disbanded. But again, whatever the new entity is not good enough. But I think in a nutshell, you're seeing an expression of youth who are stretched to the max, the high rates of unemployment, the graduates who are graduating from college all over Africa, and they have no jobs. It's that sense of hopelessness, despair. And so I think the African Union really needs to look at it from a continental point of view. It's Nigeria today, but you can see all the other little hotspots that are just waiting to erupt. Yeah. We really need to look at our continent because the fundamentals are the same. And until those fundamentals are addressed, this is going to continue to happen. Yeah. Like I often say, people jump up and down, they want to change leaders. You can change leaders all you want. Nothing is going to change because the fundamentals have not been addressed. And the fundamentals start with us being able to truly be in control of our economies. Because right now we're not. Our economies are controlled by the multinationals who are doing business in our countries. They control our economies. We are too much dependent on aid, which actually the aid, we must understand that aid is our own money. They're taking trillions out of Africa and we get 50 billion out of the trillions as aid. And we are happy to receive that aid. We have to really seriously look at the continent and say what direction we want to go as Africa. Because the total control of the continent based on the former colonizers, we really need to look at that bull by the horns and deal with that issue in a very realistic way. Otherwise, we will never be able to satisfy the needs of the youth. The issue of the unemployment. Why do we continue to create jobs for other nations outside Africa with our own natural resources?
Right.
That's simple fact. We could create enough jobs if we took control of our own natural resources and we put the money in the right direction. We could create jobs for our youth, and so they're not on the streets and ready to demonstrate. So I think what you're seeing in Nigeria is just the tip of the iceberg of a much bigger fundamental problem that hasn't been addressed in Africa.
Okay, so we're seeing that in Nigeria. We're seeing the same thing in Guinea. We're seeing it in Cote d'Ivoire. It seems like we don't have responsive leadership. And we go ahead and we change leaders, and the other leaders come in and it's pretty much the same thing. In fact, I always say Ghana, we've been lucky to have some good leaders that are responsible. But when you look at the continent as a whole, it seems like you change leaders, no difference. So what do we do?
But again, what I'm saying is the fundamentals are not being addressed. That's why you don't see any African country that changes leaders.
So what are those fundamentals that we don't get?
We got to be able to be. Well, look at who is employing people in each country. Mm-hmm. The majority of the employers are not Africans. Right there is a big problem because they're the ones getting the contracts. They're the ones with the money to get the contracts. Until we have total control of our economies, there's nothing we can do. You look at right now, we're getting ready to roll out the Continental Free Trade Area. Who are the people with money to come in and take over the continental projects? It's not us. So until we have control of our own economies, nothing's going to change because we are still controlled to a great extent.
Why
until we stop accepting aid.
If you get it, why is it that the leaders don't get it?
This is not something one leader alone can do it. It needs to be looked at from the African Union level, which is why I still think that the right African Union Commission chair is one who can come up with a proper strategy to really bring Africa up as a continent. Guinea alone is not enough. Togo alone is not enough. Central Africa alone is not enough. It has to be looked at as the entire continent. What is the strategy for the continent? Musa Faki by now should have given us a strategy for the continent. How do we bring true change to the continent? It's not something an individual country can deal with. We really need to be realistic about this issue. The fundamentals to do with Africa, they've got to be addressed. And they can be addressed very easily if we look at it from the continental. And everybody is in agreement that this change is needed. And it's dealt with, for example, the Continental Free Trade Area. That's our opportunity to truly bring fundamental change. Change that truly creates jobs, but not jobs that we are only workers and not owners. We need to be owners of our continent. So while we are creating those jobs, we must also own. It's not enough that we have planes to fly when we don't own the airplanes. It's not enough that we have trains to ride when we don't own those trains. It's not enough that we can ride on these beautiful interstates when we did not build those interstates. So we're talking fundamental change.
Okay.
So where we Africans are true owners, because right now, if we are lucky, we are subjected to being workers, but we are not owners.
Okay. Right now, the leaders, maybe Musa Faki, the current African Union Commission chair, maybe he doesn't want to put too much pressure on these leaders because he needs their votes in February.
Precisely. That's another problem. Yes, he cannot rock the boat because he needs the votes. There's no question about that. But again, wherein lies the problem? Are you there to bring change and really do the job that you're being called to do, or are you there to play politics? You know, we need to start having people who take positions because they truly want to bring change. You know, you're representing 1.27 billion people. You need to be their voice, and therefore you must be their voice. But if you're going to hide and not speak up when you're supposed to speak up, you don't need to be there.
Okay, so if the African Union Commission chair is supposed to drive change, and in driving change, you're going to put a whole lot of pressure on the leaders who turn around and vote for you. Let me ask you this. Has the time come for the African Union Commission chair position to be voted on by the masses instead of the presidents?
I think that would make sense. It would be good if that could be done. But at the same time, though, you don't necessarily have to put pressure on the heads of states. You could work with the heads of states and come up with a strategy. Come up with a strategy to truly change the continent. It's not about fighting with anybody. It's about coming up with real plans. You know, the African Continental Free Trade Area, there are certain leeways that the heads of states have agreed upon.
Okay.
You work around those leads to change to the continent. He has the keys to the Continental Free Trade Area. So why can't you just work within those parameters? Trade is how we improve economies. So if the doors have been opened for you to bring change through trade, because that's the way that they held us from moving forward and developing our economies. They messed with all these international trade policies that are going against the continent. Let's now say Africa is in charge. No item, no natural resource gets out there without that alone. Can you imagine how many millions of jobs we can create? take a real position. You know,
Okay.
they're the ones who like more chocolate than we do. Ghana.
All right. Well, I think what you've stated.
If you want to drink East African tea, you're going to get it manufactured, packaged in East Africa.
Okay.
And that can be done. Why is it not being done? The Continental Free Trade Area is giving the African Union Commission chair certain leeways. He must use them.
Okay. All right. So that sounds to me like a long-term strategy, which I know.
It's not a long-term strategy. It's not a long-term strategy.
Okay.
We're talking implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area,
okay.
which is next year.
Okay. Yes. As far as the AFCTA, that's now. But I'm talking about getting the fundamentals that you were talking about.
But that's how we deal with those are the fundamentals.
Okay.
When we can add value to our natural resources, that's
Okay.
level one fundamental.
Okay.
And we must be in, and also saying no business in Africa can be owned by a non-African and be majority shareholder.
Okay.
Any business coming from outside must partner with the local, and the locals must be majority shareholders. Okay. They do it in their country, so why can't they do that in Africa?
Okay.
So those are basics. It's all about policy and also looking out for the continent and saying Africa first, just like they say their nations first.
There's a video that went around with a gentleman, a white guy. I still haven't been able to figure out his name. He was making a presentation, and it looks like it was secretly recorded. He verbalized what you and I know for a long time, but for me, that's the first time that I heard somebody verbalize the cunning plan that they have against Africa. Did you see that video?
I've seen it, and that's some of what I've been talking about, to say there's a strategy. We are part of a grand master plan.
Okay.
And that grand master plan started with the Berlin Conference.
Okay. Now, there's another video where this guy is talking about economic hitmen. When they come in, they give you loans and saddle you with loans so that you're compromised. And if they try to do that and it doesn't work, then the hitman comes in and overthrow you. Some people will look at it and just throw. Mm-hmm.
And yet the country is still expected to pay the whole amount, even though a very small amount actually made it to that country.
That's similar to what France is doing to the Francophone countries. It's your own money, but you don't have access to it.
That's correct. But now, the issue for me is that when you look at the larger international financial institutions, mm-hmm. they're now hiring Africans to be the ones that are going to sell these loans, instead of really advising their brothers to say, my brothers, this is not a good situation. You don't have to get into this. There are other ways that we could raise money and fund projects in Africa. There's no reason why we are not allowed. Take, for example, no African bank, I think there may be one bank in South Africa that has the vault and can issue. The rest of the African banks, they're not even allowed to keep as much as 1,000 kilograms of gold that they are to keep in their bank. So now we only sell our gold in amount. They are becoming billionaires and trillionaires out of natural resources from Africa. We are not allowed. The banks, for example, we need to be able to have our own banks, keep our own gold, so we can issue financial instruments and make the monies that they're making outside Africa through monetization. That's something so simple. Why aren't we arguing that why is this not being done? And we can put consequences to say until this is also, we are at par. Africa is where all the gold is, and yet we are being told to devalue our currencies. Countries that have no gold, they're the ones that have a lot of gold in their vaults. Why? They're taking it from Africa. Because they're keeping us from keeping our own gold through our own vaults and issuing financial instruments. We need to talk about all that, but we're not asking it. All this, African banks, what do we need to do so we can now have our own, we can also have our own vaults and begin to monetize our own natural resources, starting with gold and diamonds.
Okay, in doing this, I've spoken to a lot of people who get it like you do. Why is it that you, in your opinion, why is it that Africans who get it like you do don't ever get to the point where they are the one making decision for Africa?
They do, because if you look at, for example, I've run across quite a few smart, intelligent economists at the World Bank. Mm-hmm. They're the ones being sent to Africa to tell the African government, the Reserve Bank managers, the finance ministers, what to do.
But I'm saying that
so
those on the continent, yeah. So those ones, they are working for their employers, all right. But I'm saying when they come to sell these bogus,
it doesn't matter. But
I know, but when they come to sell these bogus loans, right? Let's say those ones they're not elected. They're working for the employers. They're Africans, yes. But when they come to sell the bogus loans to us, why is it that our finance ministers and leaders on the continent don't see what you see? And those who see what you see, how come they don't get to become finance ministers and leaders of these countries?
I can't speak to that because I'm not part of the election process or appointment process in the different countries. I think in some cases, some just may simply not know. Others are intimidated into accepting whatever riffraffs, crumbs that we are given from the West. But also there's a lot of fear that if I don't play ball, I might lose my position. There's a lot of intimidation going on, by the way, a lot of it, a lot of intimidation.
Can we get away from it? If they
we need to be bold. If we all spoke out, if we all spoke out and say enough is enough. But that's where we fail. If we can all as a continent agree that these are egregious practices that we must put to an end, and together as the continent, we agree this is our position, take it or leave it. But when are we going to get to that position? We need a take it or leave it position. Because at the end of the day, they all are looking to Africa for their needs. We're actually in a very good bargaining position if we can only speak with one voice and address the issue from one united voice. And I think at this point that one united voice is the African Union Commission.
Okay. That's a position that you've expressed an interest in. Right now, the deadline is closed and you are not...
I'm not really interested.
Okay.
Let me say this.
But there's been a lot of push.
I'm not really interested in that position.
I know, but there's a lot of people who want you there. But
I understand that. And for, like I said, I had hoped, my first preference is to have someone that understands and is going to stand up and fight for the continent. Chairman Faki is not that person. Yeah. Okay. So realizing that Chairman Faki is not in a position to fight for the continent, and that's really the reason why I had said, since he is not opposed, I would jump in and oppose him, because we need somebody who understands. This moment is too crucial for us to have a weakling. And so that's really the reason. Otherwise, I'm hoping that they can open up the application process. Let's get more people, particularly women, to apply. Because definitely, I just don't think Chairman Faki is the right person for the position, not at this moment.
But right now, it looks like the die is cast. What should we do? Those of us who don't want that to happen, what are alternatives, what options are available for us?
Well, in this particular case, it is the heads of states who vote. So it's up to the heads of states. If Faki is who they want, then Faki is who they're going to get. But nothing is going to change. And my fear is Chairman Faki, from what I know and my own personal experience with him, he has more loyalty to France than Africa. And so if that's who they want, that's fine. They can have him. But this is a serious betrayal to the African people.
There was a report that even the staff at African Union Commission
absolutely
don't like
they are absolutely over 90% of the staff members, they want him gone.
Okay, then if these leaders, do you think these leaders know this, or they are in a bubble, they don't hear these things?
I think with just the little information I'm getting, quite a few of them may not actually be aware, may never have even seen the letters from the staff association. So it's up to the staff association. They have a mechanism that they can go through the the ambassadors in Addis, the Permanent Representative Council, and voice their concerns. Because they honestly do not know how they're going to spend the next 4 years with Chairman Faki. People are not aware. I mean, those letters that came from the staff association, anywhere else, if this was a Fortune 500 corporation, that CEO would have to resign.
Yeah,
that would be the only option, because the two letters that I've had, they're floating on the internet, on the social media, they are an absolute mutiny. There is a mutiny at the AU, and yet he thinks that he can weather that mutiny. Who are you leading if the people you're supposed to lead no longer want you?
We wake up every morning to different stories from politics, business, sports, and entertainment. These stories, one way or the other, affect our lifestyle and dealings with family, friends, and business associates. Your take on Diaspora Network Television gives you an opportunity to have your take on these pertinent issues via phone in and messages to our social media platforms, DNT Ghana on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If it's an important trending story, we will definitely talk about it. Your take with me, Yausechi, on DNT.
Would you buy anything without first knowing exactly what the product was and how it could benefit you? Definitely not. Neither should you vote for your next member of parliament without knowing who they are and how they plan to solve your problems. Watch The Next MP only on Diaspora Network Television and find out the men and women who want to represent you in parliament. The Next MP only on DNT.
Okay, so the African diaspora, what role can it play? I know you've started the African Diaspora Development Institute, which you're looking to come in and compete and effect some changes. But how much of your efforts is dependent on the participation of the 210 million Africans in the diaspora?
Well, actually, the plan is to say, as African diaspora, we have a responsibility to reverse the brain drain. I think we are also in a position, because we are looking at the issue from outside, we have a bird's eye view of what's going on in Africa. I think we can have, with the right information, with the right tools, we are in a better position to really facilitate change. Because we do sometimes see ourselves as coming from one particular country, but we are also very capable of looking at the continent in general. Like I often say, it's very difficult for young men in Lesotho to think continental, because they are struggling to live a living from Lesotho, and then now we are telling them, oh, you got to think and what about what's happening in Egypt? That's just not practical. But as diaspora, what I'm saying to the African diaspora is that to whom much is given, much is expected. We really need to come together and see how we can join our brothers and sisters on the continent and create a formidable African private sector. I think we are going to be having a series of invest in various African countries. Our first one is going to be with Tanzania. I believe we have set a date for the 8th, where we are asking them to come and give us a presentation. This is the private sector that has access to the opportunities, governmental opportunities in Tanzania. We're saying, come tell us. Give us the low-hanging fruits. How do we partner with the Tanzanian private sector? We want to encourage African diaspora to create PPPs with the Tanzanian private sector. When we create that formidable private sector, that's how we change Africa. So when we have that private sector that is strong, we can now take over those projects. Because currently these projects are being taken by the Chinese, by the Europeans, by everybody else. That's how we are losing control and being reduced to being workers in our own countries. So I'm urging and encouraging diaspora to create those partnerships with private sectors in the various countries. So we have certain countries lined up, about 5 countries, and we're going to keep adding on and asking them to come in and speak to the diaspora about the investment opportunities in their countries.
If you succeed in doing what you're doing, you're going to take food from the tables of the people whom this white guy represents. And in his submission, I remember a line where he said, they cannot allow that to happen. Now, What extent are they willing to go? I think we know what extent they're willing to go. Are you ready for that onslaught?
You know, to be honest with you, I'm a mother and grandmother, and I look at it and look at this world and say, am I really ready to exit this world and live it the way it is for my children and grandchildren and generations to come? My answer for that is a resounding no, now.
Okay. So what do you, if they come at you, what's your backup plan?
There is no backup plan. I'm going to continue to do what I feel is the right thing to do. There is no backup plan. The plan is to charge forward and let as many diaspora know what's going on in our Africa and what role they can play. Here's the reality. There's plenty for everybody to do, including those outsiders.
Okay.
If they were to come in, we want foreign direct investment, but they got to realize that they cannot come in from a position of exploitation. It's not me that they have to worry about. They need to worry about the African diaspora. Even their own businesses in Africa, if there's an uprising in Africa, they too cannot live in Africa. The African diaspora, no, sorry, the African youth will run them out. So it's not me, it's the Africans on the continent that they got to worry about. Because the youth, as you can see, they're not taking it anymore.
Right.
The youth are not taking it because they're the ones who are suffering.
Yes.
How long? How long are they going to continue to be abused? The youth now know what is going on. That
Yes.
video, I'm glad it's circulating like crazy.
Yeah.
People are understanding. They're getting to know the fundamentals that must change. They're beginning to understand the extent of the exploitation and the abuse. So the sooner they come to the table and treat Africa right, the better off they're going to be. Their days are numbered. They need to just see the writing on the wall. Their days are numbered.
Okay. So the estimates are now 210 million people of African descent all over in the diaspora that is living outside the continent of Africa. Are we fragmented? Is this group, how do you pull them all together? Because if they come together, nobody can touch them. But it seems to me they're fragmented. How do you first and foremost pull them together to be able to accomplish the mission that you set out to do?
Well, actually, all of it is really based on knowledge. I can tell you the response that I'm getting from the diaspora has been absolutely amazing. Last weekend, we held one of our first fundraising event with African diaspora doctors, African diaspora medical doctors on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we had a conversation with the engineers and architects. We had people from all over New Zealand, from China, from all over Europe, and some of them logged in from Africa. And
okay.
Some places that I didn't even know we had some people from India. And
wow.
They were from everywhere, Czech Republic. I was shocked. Yes, tomorrow we are having another big event where I'm addressing the diaspora and talking to them about, I'm giving them the full scope of what ADDI is all about. And I'm sharing with them our blueprint and all the various programs that we are going to be supporting. Already our Zoom only went to 600. We're going to open it up to 1,000, and they are registering from all over the world.
Okay, so let's say you put them together and you come. This overture that you made to the Tanzanians, how did they receive it?
They're the ones who approached me.
Oh, they're the ones who approached you. That's good. And so you set up a date.
They're the ones who approached me. Everywhere where we are lined up to go right now, they are approaching us.
Okay. So far, how many? So far, how many countries?
To see if we can have.
Okay.
5 countries.
How many?
5.
5 countries. Yeah, I know Tanzania. You care to name the rest of them, or? Hello?
No.
Okay. Very
well,
good.
The obvious one is we were supposed to have been there. The other obvious one is Zambia.
Okay.
And of course, Zimbabwe is an obvious one.
Okay.
Ghana, of course, we're actually doing and the city of Cape Coast. The president of Ghana would like the city of return. And so the king of Abokase, which is the kingdom where Cape Coast is, they reached out to ADDI and we have signed an MOU. And we're going to be working together to build the return city in Cape Coast. And then, of course, Equatorial Guinea.
Okay. You said something to me once before that these people know what they're doing is bad, that all we have to do is say something. Now, that sounds to me that this ADDI initiative that you started, you're not necessarily going to get a pushback from those who seek to exploit us. Is that what your thinking is?
Well, you got to push back if you are going to look for money from them. We are saying we're not poor people as African diaspora. We have enough money within ourselves. All we have to do is unite and pull our resources together. So that is the message that I'm preaching to the diaspora. They even have some who say, well, can we do GoFundMe? I said, no, GoFundMe is for people without money. We have money. We got this. All we have to do is come together.
Okay. And all right. So now let me bring you back to Africa because I know you're busy and you have to go. These flashpoints that we started, I want you to take one. If President Buhari of Nigeria was listening to you right now, what advice do you have to give him?
Well, I think he needs to stop and listen to the voices of the youth. They're trying to communicate with him, and I think it behooves him to take some time and listen to our young people. They are hurting. They really are hurting. Life is tough in Africa. Life is tough. And so on our end as diaspora, we are starting a mentorship program. We're going to start with Nigeria. I know if you're studying anything, we always say, start with Nigeria and the rest of Africa will be all right. So we're going to start with about 1,000 youth that we're going to try and mentor them, link them up with mentors within the diaspora and see how that initial pilot program goes. But again, I feel that if we as diaspora, to whom much is given, much is expected. If we can just stand up, pick up and make a difference in the life of one African youth, your job is done on earth. And there's enough of us that we can pick up these young people. And incidentally, your figures are a little bit lower on the number of diaspora. We are looking at, here in the United States, we are about 55 million Black people. The Caribbean has about 45 million. Brazil alone, you're looking at about 160 million. And then the rest of South America, I'm not quite sure exactly, but I think South America alone could have easily close to 200 million. And so the numbers are much larger. And that's before we go to Europe.
Okay. Now, Alassane Dramane Ouattara, Cote d'Ivoire. He's run a third term. The people don't want him to. They say he's served 2 terms, he must go. He is pointing to a new constitution. That constitution has wiped out his first term, and so he's within his right to go. Creating a lot of chaos, people are dying in Cote d'Ivoire. What do you tell him?
Again, that is the ball that's falling squarely in the lap of Chairman Faki of the African Union, and at this point, President Ramaphosa of South Africa in his role as the chairman of the African Union. They must deal with that situation. Again, it goes back to anticipating issues, problems before they occur. Conversation should have started a long time ago in advance. We can see the potential hotspots in Africa before they erupt. And so that strategic planning and thinking ahead and anticipating problems and putting in the diplomatic conversations when it's needed. You see, diplomacy is the preventive healthcare of international relations. So you anticipate. As a doctor, we do what we can to keep patients from getting sick to begin with. Should they get sick, we do what we can to keep them from being admitted to the hospital. If they end up in the hospital, we do the best we can to keep them from going into the intensive care. And if they get in the intensive care, we do what we can to keep them from dying. But diplomacy is the same thing. We use words to keep us from getting into conflict. And if we should end up into conflict, we use words to keep us from going into the complete uprising that we see in the demonstrations. And if it's in the case of countries, nations, we keep ourselves from going into war. And should we end up at war, we still use diplomacy to try and get us out of it. Right. So diplomacy should be applied at every level long before the anticipated conflict occurs. And I feel that that's where the African Union is failing the continent, by not anticipating these hotspots and dealing with them long before they get started, and having a strategy that truly addresses the fundamental causes, not putting a band-aid on the issues. We use words to communicate. We use words to change minds. We use words to get people to open another window and see things just a little bit differently.
Okay.
But we can't just expect people to continue the same way without the proper intervention. And that's where diplomacy is failing, even though they claim to be diplomatic. They obviously don't know how to use words to get the results that they want.
When you look at both of these countries I just mentioned, and I'm going to skip Guinea because I think what you said about Ivory Coast also applies to Guinea. But when you look at all these instances, underneath these crises are usually ethnic issues where this group doesn't get along with you. I'll give you an example. In the case of Nigeria, we, DNT, our investigations have unearthed the fact that the SARS police officers were lenient on northern youth, but they were very tough on southern youth. That's in Nigeria. When you go to Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara is a northerner. He can't trust any of the southern guys coming up to replace him. So that's why he's going. And now the northern part of Cote d'Ivoire supports him, the southern part does not. So these ethnic issues that we have, the ethnic differences that we have, can we ever overcome them to work together as brothers and sisters?
Yes, we can, because there has not been a strategy. What we are suffering from are the rule of divide and conquer that was put in place for us by the colonizers. Look at what President Nyerere did in Tanzania. President Nyerere said everybody must speak one language, Swahili. Okay. It is for that one reason, that singular reason of having one language, that you don't have issues of tribalism in Tanzania, because everybody speaks the same language. We need to start from the beginning. That's another, again, fundamental that we're talking about. If we're looking at fundamentals, we need to address those fundamentals. They may not happen overnight. It might take a whole generation, but let's work towards addressing those fundamentals. Tribalism remains a serious problem in Africa, but also there are other things we could do. What the Continental Free Trade Area is offering us, particularly with the free movement of people, that's how we're going to neutralize tribalism. It's like the United States. You know, most people don't live where they were born. They're very mobile people. Mm-hmm. They can wake up today and say, hey, I live in Alabama, but there's a job for me in California. Off they go. You know, so when we begin to be able to just open up our Africa, allow our young people, maybe even put an intentional program that says, before you can graduate from college, you ought to have visited 2 or 3 more African countries. You ought to have spent so many months in another African country. Let's begin to allow our children to be mobile. And that's how we neutralize the issues of tribalism. At the end of the day, we are Africans, for heaven's sake. We're one people.
We wake up every morning to different stories from politics, business, sports, and entertainment. These stories, one way or the other, affect our lifestyle and dealings with family, friends, and business associates. Your take on Diaspora Network Television gives you an opportunity to have your take on these pertinent issues via phone in and messages to our social media platforms, DNT Ghana on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If it's an important trending story, we will definitely talk about it. Your take with me, Yalsichi, on DNT.
Would you buy anything without first knowing exactly what the product was and how it could benefit you? Definitely not. Neither should you vote for your next member of parliament without knowing who they are and how they plan to solve your problems. Watch The Next MP only on Diaspora Network Television and find out the men and women who want to represent you in parliament. The Next MP only on DNT.
You're married to a Ghanaian and you're from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Okay, was there any hesitation when you first met my brother?
No, Ghanaians are the most intelligent men on earth. And so I'm a proud Ghanaian wife. No, there was no hesitation. I wanted to give birth to intelligent children. I'm not saying Zimbabweans are not intelligent, but I think as a Ghanaian wife, I just think the Ghanaians are the most intelligent men on earth.
Well, we appreciate you for that. Now, the follow-up question to this is there an ethnic group in Zimbabwe that if you met a guy from there and he told your parents, they would have looked at you and said, "Is something wrong with you?"
Well, when I was growing up, when I was young, of course, that was donkey years ago. Yes, if for me, I'm from Mashonaland, and so if you married a man from Matabeleland, or actually the men were not a problem. What we had was, if you married a woman from Matabeleland, they're lazy. So, which was not true, of course. But, so no, it was a no. If you married a woman from Matabeleland, they were generally considered lazy. But I think all that is gone now. That is completely gone. People can marry because people are marrying not only from between the Debeles and the Shonas, but they're marrying from outside, not only from outside Zimbabwe, but outside the continent. So it used to be, it was shied upon if you did not marry from within your tribe, but that's gone now. Those days are over.
I think that may be our biggest issue because you get it, I get it. I mean, I'm married to a Nigerian and it never crossed my mind. There was no hesitation. But there are some today, educated, who insist in, dealing, not only marrying from their own, but dealing with people who come from the same area. How do we overcome that? I mean, you mentioned the divide and conquer, but at the end of it, that is the problem. How do we solve it? How do we get over it?
It's very easy. If you take the average college student, you have to say you have to spend 6 months in an African country. I can tell you at that age, by the time they finish those 6 months from Nigeria and they spend 6 months in Kenya, they're going to come back with a beauty from Kenya.
Okay.
That's how you do.
Okay.
So we have to be intentional and practical about it.
Okay.
Let's allow our children to explore their Africa. They must move. They must spend X amount of time outside their country. And let's make the resources available for them to do so. It shouldn't be something that they have to fund themselves. No. Complete direct exchange program. They still pay their tuition at their own university. They only need accommodations. For every student that comes from Kenya to Nigeria, one student comes from Nigeria to Kenya to stay in that dormitory. So it's really no cost to the student, no extra cost to the student. But we're saying we need our children to be mobile. We want our children to be exposed so they can be more open-minded. If your tribe is the only thing you know, you don't think of anything else. You look at others who don't talk like you as outsiders, as aliens. So let's be intentional about how we begin to mobilize our children and just show them a different way of life and begin to dilute and neutralize these issues of tribalism, because our continent is big and beautiful. It is supposed to be enjoyed and enjoyed by all of us to the fullest extent.
Let's say Chairman Faki has had a change of heart, but he simply doesn't know how to do this. You are his advisor. What advice would you give him?
First of all, let him know that the African diaspora are Africa's gold. And by shying away from the African diaspora, you are making a serious mistake. Africa cannot build a sustainable Africa without a very strong participation from the African diaspora. So that will be big mistake number one, ignoring the African diaspora.
Okay. Now, Ramaphosa, South Africa, what would you tell him? As the leader?
I really feel that they really should allow the heads of states to be there for longer than a year, because really you're there before you're beginning to just get to know what's going on. In his case, he's a new president in South Africa. He's trying to deal with issues in his country. At the same time, he has to deal with issues at the African Union. And before you know it, his time is gone and it's time for somebody else. So I really think that, in all fairness, the AU chair the president should at least hold it for at least 2 years. It gives them time to really, whatever changes they may want to implement, it gives them time to implement them all the way to the end.
They're not the executive. But they're not the executive. We have the AU Commission chair for that.
Yes, but the chair is, that's actually the issue. Keep in mind, the chair is supposed to implement the decisions of the African heads of states. Okay. Everybody is in agreement. that is the biggest problem with the African Union, implementation. On paper, there are documents beautifully written. African Union looks great. The problem is implementation. A lot of decisions that were agreed upon were never implemented. So again, wherein lies the problem. And the African Union chair, who is the head of state, should be able to crack the whip with AUC chair if they cannot deliver on what they want done.
Okay.
But within a year, there's just not enough time. It's just not enough time for the president, who is the AU chair, to really see the changes to completion.
Okay, when you were African Union ambassador to United States, you spoke directly to France, and France listened. France made some concessions. Now, I want you to speak to that gentleman in that video who had the cunning plan who verbalized the cunning plan against Africa. Now, for him that you heard, there are millions like that. We only heard him. With Macron, you can easily identify him and talk to him. But for the shadowy figures like that, what do you have to tell them?
Let me make sure everybody's aware of the video that you're talking about.
Right.
Is the video of a gentleman who was giving a presentation. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure where or what the meeting was all about, but basically in a nutshell, he was saying unity among the Africans must be prevented at all costs, and that sub-Saharan Africa, unity among particularly sub-Saharan Africa must be prevented, because when Africans are united, it's a dangerous thing for the West. And so that's the gist of what the gentleman was talking about. Mm-hmm. I would say to him, this is a new world, and this is a new Africa. While they may have gotten away with exploiting Africa for centuries, their days are numbered. There's only so much and for so long that you can abuse the people before they finally say enough is enough. We are at such a point that the Africans and the Africans in general, they are not taking it anymore. Our eyes are open. We can say, what's that song by, is that Jimmy Cliff says, I can see clearly now. We can say, we can actually sing, we can see clearly now. The youth are beginning to get it. The Africans are understanding. They are getting a better appreciation of the games that are being played. But more importantly, they are getting more and more bold to speak up, stand up, and push back. That is what's happening. So I would like to say to them, you need to change your strategy. Like I would say, if this was a basketball game, I would be asking them to call for timeout. It's time to re-strategize. You can't play this new game using old rules. It's time to play this new game and re-strategize and come up with new rules of this new game that is in Africa. Their days are numbered if they do not change it.
Okay, finally, I want you to speak to the African youth. They are demonstrating in Guinea, they're demonstrating in Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Nigeria. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
I can hear you.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
I can hear you.
I said, finally, I want you to speak to the African youth. They're demonstrating in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea. They just finished in Mali. And when they protest peacefully, they get killed. How else should they engage their respective governments? Because they seem to get it, but the leaders don't get it. So how do they engage their leaders?
Well, I am not on the continent, and so I would be careful as to how I make any judgments about the conditions on the ground. But what I can say in general, I like for the youth to know that we feel your pain. From what we know, with the high rates of unemployment around the continent, the youth are struggling. They are hurting. They are graduating from colleges and they can't find jobs. The unemployment rates are way too high. We feel your pain, and for that we apologize. We did not choose, you did not choose to be born in such a world that's clearly not giving you the opportunities that you deserve after all your hard work. For that, we apologize. Please bear with us. The conversations, from what I hear, are taking place at a high level. More importantly, it's really just an unfortunate situation when police kind of get out of hand, like the situation with SARS. Keep in mind that these police are humans, and I often wonder. I said, nobody will give me a gun to kill anybody. I could never do it. But then there's some people who are wired differently. How do you honestly point a gun at someone who could easily be your child, who could easily be your niece, your nephew, your own son? And so I fail to see, when we see those levels of violence in Africa, which is violence by the Africans against other Africans. Even these policemen, at the end of the day, they go home to their children, and their children could easily be on the street. So I think maybe what's needed also major police reform, where these policemen could be trained on how to de-escalate situations, how to deal with the masses when they are voicing their concerns. I think that is, to some extent, I think is the lack of training within the police forces. There are ways of de-escalating the situation. The masses must be allowed to protest and their voices must be heard. But our police must get the proper training so they know how to handle crowds.
As usual, my sister, thank you so much for making time for us. Now the airport is open. COVID restrictions seem to be coming down in Africa. When are you coming to Ghana? I'm extending an invitation to you.
My in-laws want me home as well. So I'll talk to my husband, but we're looking maybe maybe sometime in January, during the soon after the holiday.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely, I'm past due for a visit home.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining me. This has been an edition of Diaspora Weekly, and with my sister, Her Excellency Dr. Arikana Chiwambori-Kwao. It's never a dull moment when it comes to the passion that you bring to Africa. I think you always bring something new to the table, and I really, really want to thank you for joining me.
No, thank you, my brother. I'm hoping that DNT will grow to be the CNN of Africa. Of course, we won't call it CNN. It'll be DNT. I'm just using CNN as an example. Because, my brother, you're speaking the truth. You are not allowing yourself to be sold. You are saying it like it is. And we need more of you. We need more television stations like yours. Kudos to you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. And amen to what you just predicted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. You do the same. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.